Good morning. So let's continue with the second segment of the chapter, The Portrait of a Lady. Page number 4, last three lines. As the years rolled by, we saw less of each other. For some time, she continued to wake me up and get me ready for school. But when I came back, she would ask me what the teacher had taught me. What the teacher had taught me. I would tell her English words and little things of Western science and learning. The law of gravity, Archimedes' principle, the world being around, etc. etc. So many things that I used to learn at school, I used to share that teachings with my grandmother. This made her unhappy. Why? Because she could not help me with my lessons. Na? This was the reason. She did not believe. She did not believe in the things they taught at the English school and was distressed that there were no teaching about God and scriptures. Why was she unhappy with the school teaching? Because in school teaching there was no option, there was no provision of teaching about God and scriptures and other things. One day I announced that we were being given music lessons. Wow! I told my grandmother that we were given music lessons in the school. But, oh my God, what happened? She was very disturbed. To her, music had lewd associations. Lewd means some vulgar associations, vulgar connectivities. Lascivious it was, right? It was the monopoly of harlots and beggars. She considered that music, learning of music, is the sole work of, is the work of only harlots and beggars. Harlots, harlots means the singing and dancing women of some indecent characters, right? And beggars also, and not meant for gentle people, gentle folk. She said nothing, but her silence meant disapproval. She didn't speak against it, but she never liked it and she disapproved it. She rarely talked to me thereafter. She means always, you can say, avoided me all the time. Right? So now what happened? When I went to the university, when I went to the university, what happened then? Excuse me, there it is. When I went to the university, I was given a room of my own. The common link of friendship was snapped, was broken. My grandmother accepted her seclusion. Seclusion means isolation, separation from all. She accepted it with resignation. With resignation means with some reluctant acceptance. Means she never wanted, but she had accepted it with all humility. She accepted that now she would be isolated, she would not be talking to me. She rarely left her spinning wheel to talk. Actually, there was my grandmother was the habit of spinning the wheel, right? You must have seen in many houses you must have seen this spinning wheel and reciting prayers. She continually carried on spinning the wheel and reciting her prayers. Only in the afternoon she relaxed for a while to feed the sparrows. while she sat in the veranda breaking the bread into little bits, into the little pieces, small pieces. Hundreds of little birds collected round her, creating a veritable bedlam of chirping. Creating a veritable means absolutely true, real. Bedlam stand for a noisy uproar or confusion, means all together all the birds, they used to chirp in such a manner that it created a sort of confusion there, right? An uproar, loud noises of chirping were heard all over. Some came and perched on her on her legs. Some birds, so they were so much attached to her that they even sat on her hands, on her legs, and even on her head. She smiled, but never shooed them away. Never shooed them away. Never just dragged them away. It used to be the happiest half an hour of the day for her. Enjoyed it. She enjoyed this moment. But when I decided to go abroad for further studies, narrator says, when I decided to go abroad for further studies, I was true. I was sure rather my grandmother would be upset. I would be away for 5 years for my study in foreign country, and at her age, one could never tell. What one could never tell, whether she would be alive when I shall return. Whether she would be alive when I return? No. She was so old now. One could never expect that she would be alive by the time. But my grandmother could. She was not even sentimental at the time of departure. No emotions were there. She came to leave me. She came to drop me at the railway station, but did not talk or even show any sort of emotion. But her lips moved in prayer continuously. Her mind was lost in prayer always, as usual. There was no change. Her fingers were busy telling the beads of her rosary. Silently, oh God, silently she kissed my forehead. And when I left, I cherished the moist imprint. I cherished the moist imprint. What do you mean by cherished? I kept it in my mind. Cherish होता है, I enjoyed that moist imprint, the imprint of kiss on my forehead, as perhaps the last sign of physical contact between us. Perhaps it was the last time that I had felt that my grandmother had clasped me in her hand, in her arms, and she kissed me on my forehead. My God. But that was not so. After 5 years, I came back home and was met by her at the station. Means she came to receive me at the station. She did not look a day older even. Same looks, same stature, same grandma was there. She still had no time for words. And while she clasped me, she embraced me in her arms. I could hear her reciting her prayers. Even then, even at that time, she was reciting the prayers. She was saying her prayers somewhere inaudible. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with the sparrows, whom she fed longer and with some frivolous rebukes. Frivolous rebukes, you know what do you mean by frivolous rebukes here? Frivolous here stand for some untrue, you can say, non-serious, you can say, but affectionate scolding. Rebuke stand for scolding or criticism, you can say. Means Dadi was saying, hey, go away, why are you disturbing me, mar janiya. Punjabi ladies usually say so, है ना? So she just she was scolding them, but not with the heart. Non-seriously she was scolding all the birds. In the evening, a change came over her. She did not pray. My God. She collected the women of the neighborhood, got an old drum, and started to sing. She took an old drum and she started to sing. Oh God. And as you must have seen in your houses also, for any happy occasion, women are collected in the house and they start singing. They organize a singing, right? And started to sing. For several hours, she thumped the sagging skins of the dilapidated drum. Sagging skins of the dilapidated drum. What do you mean by sagging? Sagging means become loose, or you can say hanging, you can say curved somewhere in the middle. That is called sagging. Dilapidated drum. Skins of dilapidated. What do you mean by dilapidated? Dilapidated means old and almost worn out, almost broken, which cannot be repaired later on. That is called dilapidated. Drum stand for dholak. right? So she started beating the skins of dilapidated drum and sang of the homecoming of warriors. She sang those songs which are usually sung in the honor of the return of warriors from the war, right? We had to persuade her to stop. We said, "Oh, Dadi, oh, Granny, please stop. Please stop now. It will trouble you." And the same thing happened, right? We persuade, we try to convince her to stop, to avoid overstraining. That was the first time since I had known her that she did not pray. First time in my life I noticed that she could not pray that night. The next morning she was taken ill. God, it was a mild fever, and the doctors told us that it would go, no problem. But my grandmother thought differently. She told us that her end was near. She predicted, or rather, she had announced that she would be no more now. She said that since only a few hours before the close of the last chapter of her life, she had omitted to pray. Since only a few hours before she disclosed it, for the close of her last chapter, means she had never said in her life that she would die, but now, just few hours before the death, before the close of the last chapter of her life, she told, and she had omitted to pray. She was not going to waste any more time talking to us. She kept us away and just asked us to let her stay in isolation so that she could pray to God. We protested, but she ignored our protest. We protested, "Dadi, you will die, okay, you get the treatment," but she didn't. She lay peacefully in bed praying and telling her beads only. She kept on telling the rosary beads. Even before, just a minute, even before we could suspect, her lips stopped moving and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. Means during her prayer, nobody knows when she died. But we could know about her death when the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. She stopped removing the rosary. A peaceful pallor spread on her face, and we knew that she was dead. Her face became absolutely pale. Paleness appeared on it, and we understood that she was no more. We lifted her off the bed as is customary. A dead person is not kept on the bed, it is put down on the ground. The dead body is put down on the ground. Laid her on the ground and covered it with a red shroud. What do you mean by shroud? Shroud means a cloth in which dead body is wrapped. Right? After a few hours of mourning, we left her alone. After expressing our grief for a while, we left her alone to make arrangements for her funeral, for her final rituals. In the evening, we went to her room with a crude stretcher to take her to be cremated. A crude stretcher. Crude stretcher means a stretcher made of there's bamboo woods. Right? Stretcher means you can say something that could with which we lift the body while we take it for cremation. Right? In the evening, we went to her room with a crude stretcher to take her to be cremated. The sun was setting and had lit her room and veranda with a sunshine of golden light. Her room was lit with that. We stopped halfway in the courtyard. Why? All over the veranda and in her room, right up to where she lay dead and stiff wrapped in the red shroud, thousands of sparrows sat scattered on the floor. Thousands of sparrows were there. There was no chirping. Surprise was there. The birds were silent. We felt sorry for the birds, and my mother fetched some bread for them, as my grandmother used to do. My mother also went inside and brought some breads, and she broke it into little crumbs, little pieces, the way my grandmother used to, and threw it to them. The sparrows took no notice of the bread. The sparrows took no notice of the bread. While we were taking the grandmother for the funeral, there was no chirping, right? And then my mother threw some breadcrumbs to them, but the sparrows took no notice of the bread. When we carried my grandmother's corpse stand for dead body. When my took when we carried our grandmother's corpse off, they flew away. The the birds the birds flew away very quietly. They didn't make a noise even. Right? The next morning, the sweeper swept the breadcrumbs into the dustbin. So that was the character of my grandmother. Very pious, a very, you can say, uh, endowed with several positive values of kindness, benevolence, generosity, compassion, and above all, spirituality. My grandmother emerged as very strong character, and really she was. So, dear children, that marks the end of this chapter. I hope you must have enjoyed it, and now go through the questions and